live on a Tuesday afternoon in Newcastle, Australia. It is 6:05 in the morning in Manchester, England. And this is the only place in the world where the Tigers can have all the changes but still play the same way. And where Wayne Bennett could walk out to Suncorp Stadium and say, yeah, thanks for the 2 points. Yes, this is the Sideline Chat Podcast, the one-stop shop for rugby league. Along with Mark Hendry, I'm Connor Marcellis, and today it is your NRL Week 2 debrief. We've got some very tough games to get through. Tipping-wise, it was a shocker for us. But let's jump right in. First off of round 2, Thursday night. This is a blockbuster already. Panthers versus South Sydney for your Thursday night action.
It is going to be an absolute blockbuster game. Pretty much all of round one were pretty much blockbuster matches, barring maybe one, which we'll touch on later on.
There was certainly hard game aims to pick. Of course, South Sydney did not escape their 27-18 win over the Sharks completely unscathed, unfortunately losing Jai Arrow and Tavita Totola. So Michael Cheekham will take Arrow's spot at the left edge back row, and Daniel Saluka Fafita has been automatically promoted into the starting pack.
Yeah, and as for the home side for the second consecutive week in a row, Scott Sorensen is out and his place is taken by Matt Eisenhuth in unchanged lineup. They got beat by the Brisbane Broncos 13 points to 12.
Well, let's start with the home side first, because, I mean, they're going to be all the buzz at the moment. They got rattled. I mean, really rattled by this Brisbane side.
But who would have expected though?
In atrocious weather conditions, which was probably Appy Coruscant's tears.
Possibly.
But the second time they played it at home in atrocious weather conditions, and Brisbane just played to them perfectly.
They certainly did. I mean, they were lucky. Well, I was going to say Penrith are lucky that they got the 2 points. Two tries, I should say. Like they did against St. Helens, they're lucky to get the 2 tries late in the match. But it's just the same scoreline 2 weeks in a row. One in pre-season and one in round 1. And the exact same scoreline at the same venue.
The highlight obviously has to be, of course, and no arguments, he was the Broncos' best on the ground. And in my eyes, it was Herbie Farnworth. 2 tries, 154 run meters, 4 tackle breaks, and a line break to his name. That second try could have gone either way with the bouncing ball.
It definitely could. Like, it's a bouncing ball. You don't know where it's going to go. It's a big risk. And because of the shape of the ball, that doesn't really help it either. But yeah, it was just a pot luck that he got it in his favour.
And as for that, he just made a mockery of the Penrith defensive line as well. Oh, that left edge humming nicely early. The second time Kevin Walters has gotten a round 1 win under his belt, and against a perennial heavyweight. How do you think Penrith are pace-wise?
A little bit off. I mean, Penrith made a lot of errors, which is unlike them of what we've seen over the last, 3 years? Would have been, I mean, pretty much near perfect over the last 3 years, especially the last 2. But they're a little bit off the pace. They'll probably get into life without Coruscant and Kickout.
I think they got into it all right with Garner. I think he did all right for the Panthers out on that left edge. But you're definitely right. Coruscant was a big L that they had to take at the end of last year.
I know I'm jumping the gun a bit too early, but they're losing another one at the end of the year, Steve Crichton, so they're going to adjust then too. But
better make it 2, because Spencer Lenu's come out in the 9 newspapers and said he's signing with the Sydney Roosters.
Well, that too, so
while the club hasn't officially announced he's going to the Roosters, we do know from the horse's mouth, or should I say from the Panthers' mouth, that he's going to be at Bondi Junction next year.
Yeah, so the dynasty of what has been Penrith over the last 2 years, possibly 3, if you include, I know they lost in the grand final in 2020.
Yeah,
sorry.
20.
Could it be coming to an end?
Well, you have to admit, it is very hard to keep a good side like Penrith together for a sustained period of time. This was something that was always going to happen. Like Rome, it was always going to go into decline before finally petering out.
True.
But Penrith have done well, like Melbourne and the Roosters before them to feature in the last 3 straight grand finals. How many sides can and make 3 straight grand finals over that course of time and essentially field some of the best players in their position, not just in this country, but around the world? I honestly think you'd say Nathan Cleary is the world's best halfback at this point in time. Stephen Crichton is definitely up there with the world's best centres. Is probably Herbie Farnworth closest thing, or
I don't know, but he's up there.
James Fisher-Harris? Honestly, between him, Alex Walmsley, maybe Payne Haas, probably not, and Junior Paolo, but amongst 4 of the world's best front rowers.
Yep.
And to have that, and this is something that Gus Gould was talking about 100% footy last night. He's saying the salary cap, a little bit earlier in the week as well, but he basically says the salary cap punishes teams that actually put the time and effort into their pathways and rewards clubs that don't really have much junior investment, but just build successful rosters anyway.
Yeah, that's 100% right. He set up the best system in the league at Penrith. Gus Gould.
Yeah.
And like you just said, it's starting to bite them in the backside a little bit. But they'll probably have the next crop ready to come in and slot straight in and do just as well.
Well, Sony Luke's a good example of that.
Yeah.
And I think the comparisons last night is Api Coruscant clone.
Well, if that's the case, well, watch out.
Well, his opponents, we sort of have got on a bit expanded view of this preview coverage so far, but South Sydney, they really got into a dogfight against the Sharks.
Yeah, to be quite honest with you, have to agree with your words there. It looked like South were going to go on with it, but then the Sharks were going on, like catching up. It was, for the first 4 tries in a match, it was South,
Tit for tat.
Sharks, South, Sharks.
And considering that we also touched on the Totola and the Arrow losses as well, I got to say, the South forwards really stood up here. First of all from a standout, I'm going to go the main one, Keon Kalala-Matangi. 1 try, 146 run meters, 3 tackle breaks and a line break. But I got to give raps as well. Your bench forwards have got to come on and do a job as well. And I got to say, Shaq Mitchell stood out for me as well. 119 run meters, 4 tackle breaks, 11 hit-ups, and for a bench forward who doesn't play many minutes or hasn't had that much game time, get this, 26 tackles without a single miss. How hard is that to do when you're a bench front rower?
Pretty hard, to be quite honest with you. I mean, if there's an 80-minute front rower, which is not very many of them, or back rowers in that sort of pack as well, but that's a very, very solid effort from Shaq Mitchell.
And Lachlan Ilias, of course, had a blinder as well. That South's right edge, you'd have to say it is the best in the league. I mean, all the talk is about who's got the best left edge, but the Rabbitohs are kings when it comes to the right edge.
Now Ilias has got a year under his belt from 2022. He's more experienced. He's learnt a lot from Cody Walker over the last season and probably into the off-season as well. He'll be one to watch this season for Souths.
Now, that brings us back to this game as well. Final view on this.
Penrith were really off in round. I shouldn't say they were. I'm actually going to say for Penrith standards, they were really off, which you don't say that very often. Back at home again, but a much tougher opponent in South Sydney. Who knows if it's wet weather? Well, we know where Penrith's going to be, but if it's a dry field, it'll be probably still lean towards South Sydney to win this one 1-6. It's just a little bit, well, compared to what South did against the Sharks and what Penrith did against Brisbane, South were the better side. So I'm going to say South will win this one.
The impact and the resilience of the Rabbitohs bench was on show against Cronulla. And Cronulla's forward pack was no slap ouch whatsoever. Even if Wade Graham was trying to cannonball one of them back to Redfern.
That is true.
They stood tall against a very formidable Sharks forward pack back there. while I expect they might try and replicate that, I just think Penrith, they'll go back to the drawing board. They'll readjust things. I definitely think they'll be looking to really go after Latrell Mitchell, especially with his media sledges he's been getting enough, saying Penrith's off the boil, Penrith's in trouble. Will we rate themselves a chance? To me, this is setting up to backfire big time. I'm going to go to the Penrith Panthers to respond in a big way at home. I think 7-12.
Fair enough.
South Sydney back in their place for the moment.
Fair enough. On to the next game, the first of the Friday night fixtures. We've got the Parramatta Eels up against the Cronulla Sharks. For the Sharks side, we have Wade Graham. He's heading to the judiciary for a reckless high tackle. So his place on the bench is taken by none other than Connor Tracy, while Royce Hart returns from an elbow injury on the bench with Jack Williams also out with a head knock.
One change only for the Eels. Isaac Lumi has been replaced on the right wing by the returning Sean Russell, who of course was the hat-trick hero for the Eels in round one last year. Bailey Simonson been included in the reserves as well, but not really a chance of featuring just yet for Brad Arthur. But other than that, one change for Russell, an unchanged Eels side that went down to the Melbourne Storm 16 points to 12 in the opener.
And it went to Golden Point.
Yes, it
I
did.
did call Sharks vs Rabbitohs to be the first game to Golden Point. I wasn't expecting the first game to be in Golden Point.
No one expected game one, round one of season 2023 to go into Golden Point.
But it was an absolute cracker of a game. When I was obviously watching this game and I was going to Golden Point, I said, how good is it to have footy back? Like, seriously.
I know.
Week one, game one, Golden Point thriller. What else could you ask for?
And once again, Craig Bellamy really silencing the critics. Guilty. And Melbourne keeping alive this absolute... It's legendary. This is a league record that will never be broken. Never set before, and will probably never be broken again.
Big call to say that, but it could, but... Yeah, it's going to be very, very hard to beat for Melbourne's record of, 20 or 21?
It's 20 years in a row as of now.
20 years in a row of winning
Round one fixtures, never dropped once.
And that's all been under Craig Bellamy.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Question is, can they make a 21 in a row next year without Craig Bellamy at the helm?
Well, we're getting too far ahead. We've got to go back.
I know.
Look, like South, Melbourne were very resilient, especially after losing Cameron Munster to that suspected compound fracture, which looks ugly as all hell.
It does. Apparently the bone was poking out the finger, and I thought, whenever the commentators were like, oh, yeah, he's gone for the match. Nope. Taped them together and his other finger taped them together, and off he went.
And it was his ring finger as well, which proves he actually's got rings, unlike the Tigers. I just sort of bought into this sledge the Tigers at all costs mentality, haven't I?
Yes, but I could easily flip that into your favour. Well, in my favour will be the Dogs, but we'll get to that later on.
At the nightclub, or are you just going to just drop the hammer from the roof?
Probably just drop the hammer from a roof.
All right, I'll see you in court then.
Okay.
Like literally every other Dragons player.
Hey!
See, I can do it too.
Yeah, I know.
Look, Parramatta had a golden opportunity, I think, but they really they let themselves down at the dying minutes, I think. No one saw the first try from Melbourne coming whatsoever. That beautiful sweep play, a grant on the Josh King. No one thought he'd get a pass in and to set Nick Meaney up for the first try. That really caught everyone by surprise.
It certainly did, but that's the magic that Melbourne can produce.
And for me, Josh King was Melbourne's best on the ground out of that first round.
That's
133 run meters, 1 try assist, 1 tackle break, and 3 offloads.
Thought he would have gone with Harry Grant, but okay. Yep, fair enough. Josh King put in a solid effort himself. I had to give you credit for choosing that one.
And then the tit for tat between the two sides that led up to the second try in the Golden Point. But I tell you what about Josh Hodgson?
He actually got a full game in.
He got a full game in, and he looked pretty good.
He's back to his usual self. Tried kicking from dummy half, which he's done in the past before, into the in-goal area, and it sometimes worked, but sometimes didn't. But that's what we used to see.
The lead-up work for Junior Paulo's try, that was probably Hodgson at his best. And Jermaine Hopgood, I got to say, he was a real shining light for the Eels and the forwards.
Yeah, he certainly was. I'm going to say now, I reckon you would have gone with him as standout player if Parramatta had won.
Oh, between him and Hodgson, yeah. Hopgood and Hodgson, yeah.
Yeah.
Those two have like I said, this is what Brad Arthur does best. He takes players that have limited opportunity or careers have gone a little bit pear-shaped, and he can turn you into an absolute rep star. That's what he's done. This is his MO.
Yeah.
The Eels are made up of all these players that have had shaky ground in their past careers at other clubs. You come to Parramatta, he'll turn it around and put you on the straight and narrow.
Exactly. And it's just shown, yes, he can. But credit to him, though. That's where his strengths and his strengths are. See what he does with his son, Jacob, to see if he can turn him into a rep player from the junior system.
We'll see how that pans out. Now, focusing more on this game, this will be Mitchell Moses' 200th game as he takes to the field at CommBank Stadium. Now, remember, he hasn't won in his 50th. He hasn't won in his 100th. And he also hasn't won his 150th. So the question is, can he break the milestone hoodoo?
I hope he does. He deserves one win in one of his milestone matches, whether it's his 200th or 250th if he gets there. But surely 200. In front, it will be a very big crowd at CommBank.
As long as the Eels don't implode, I think cut the errors out at the wrong times. That's the most important thing. But the contract negotiations with Moses, do you think it'll have a bearing effect here in the Sharks' favour?
Hey, could be a Mitchell Moses 200th game special. They could announce it on the day of his...
Whether they win or lose, they announce?
They probably announced before.
So you reckon they'll announce it at a Friday afternoon press conference, or in the captain's run, and then they go into the game?
Possibly. If it's not on game day, it'll be like...
a day before.
The day before, yeah.
Well, I think the Eels will definitely address some of the shortfallings they had, and I don't think they'll be dragged into another narrow finish like they were against Melbourne. I think they'll win. They'll bounce back here, to say the least. I think the Eels 1-6. They'll bounce back against the Sharks, who themselves are trying to avoid an 0-2 start.
They will be, but the Sharks did put up somewhat of a reasonable effort there. They did go try with I've gone blank. South. They did go try to start on with, when they kind of faded away. They can't afford to do that again, Cronulla, but coming against another top opposition like the Parramatta Eels.
And at CommBank. That's the big thing, the CommBank factor.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't count for nothing against Melbourne, but...
It's a slightly easier opponent to beat at. I know Sharks are a solid side, don't get me wrong. But Melbourne set that little step up from the Sharks, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, if you were ranking this on a tier list, Melbourne is probably like an S or an S minus, and the Sharks are probably an A.
Yeah. I'm going to say Parramatta win this one 1-6.
Yeah, I reckon there'll be a tight affair between two real heavyweights looking for a massive improvement on season 2022.
And Mitch Moses actually win in a milestone match.
Yeah, hopefully he does. Now, speaking of big matchups, it doesn't get bigger than this. The Brisbane Broncos playing host to the North Queensland Cowboys on your main Friday night game live on Nine's Wide World of Sports. This will be the biggest all-Queensland derby we've ever had. And the Cowboys, good news for them, they are running out with virtually an unchanged lineup from the side that down the Canberra Raiders 19 points to 18.
As for the Broncos, Reece Walsh is making his return appearance to the Broncos starting at fullback, which pushes Selwyn Cobbo to the win, with Jesse Arthurs going back down to the 18th man. Other than that, unchanged lineup.
The Cowboys, would you say they were in cruise control for that first half against Canberra, or would you say otherwise?
No, I had to say Cowboys were in cruise control. But then the second half was a completely different story. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Cowboys were up 18-6 at the break. The only point that the Cowboys get was from a Chad Townsend field goal.
That is right. Emre Gula scores for Canberra in the final 3 minutes. It's the first half. Then Starling and White in quick succession. And 2 tries in the space of 4 minutes. And Fogarty ices both of them.
So Canberra scored, 2 unanswered tries very quickly? 2?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of them was against the run of play. I think Whiten's was.
Yeah. But Cowboys should have gone on with that match. They were up 18-6 at the break. They could have pushed on. But they were just probably cruising a bit too much. Or Ricky Stewart had a spray at his players and say, get on with this.
Well, you got the second part right. Ricky Stewart did have a spray.
Yes, but not to the players at halftime. This was to the NRL and the RLPA.
But look, Canberra, they fought back very well. Very admirably, they fought back in the second half to get to 18-all against what everyone thinks is a team bound for the grand final.
The Cowboys.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think they were very unlucky to go down, but Scott Drinkwater, he provided an early season highlight. From fullback, 2 tries, 132 run meters and 3 tackle breaks. But that second try set up. Just Robson, the small kick out of dummy half, and then Drinkwater comes through. Ben barbers it right before all the in-goal line. Doesn't get any better than that, does it?
Yeah. Unbelievable effort there. It's Cowboys have set the tone of how well they're going to be for this season. Backing up from what was a magnificent 2022 season for them.
It was definitely a season to remember under Todd Payton. And it doesn't get bigger than this on a Friday night at Suncorp. Again, and it's the Broncos side again, knocked off the Premiers.
Yes, that was, I have to say, one of the upsets of round 1. It's going to be sold out Suncorp Stadium, I'm calling it right now. Friday night, Suncorp Stadium, Brisbane at home, Cowboys as the opponent, is the Queensland Derby, sold out.
You reckon 52,000 rock up for this?
Yep. It's Queensland Derby, come on. Cowboys are playing well, they just won, so did Brisbane. But Brisbane to knock off the reigning back-to-back premiers, that's a massive achievement. That will draw more people in than what there would have been in this matchup already.
And that's a really high standard they set for these Queensland derbies.
That's it. I'm hyping this game up.
I don't know.
I'm trying to.
I really don't know.
I'm calling it another Queensland Derby golden point.
Oh, so are you going to gamble on calling this as a golden point game again?
Yes. Hey, there's a few golden point games between these two. Over the last few years, it hasn't been, but since the 2015 Grand Final, there was I think 4 or 5 back-to-back golden point games in a row.
Or games that ended with at least a field goal or an extra time.
Yes. Calling it Valentine Holmes field goal to win it in golden point.
1 or 2 points?
They're probably... I'm going to say the
now
1.
I got you thinking.
I'm going to say the 1 point field goal from Valentine Holmes in the 80... I'm going to say the 88th minute of the match.
So you're going into the second half of golden point, and Valentine Holmes notches 1 for the Cowboys to win.
Yep. Big call, I know, but...
You're giving me reference. You're giving me reference for this one, but it's just so hard.
I know. It's so... Yeah.
The forward packs are both equal. There's a good, strong resolve around both sides. My only concern was the Broncos almost let Penrith back into it.
Yeah.
If they do the same thing with the Cowboys, I'm with you. I think if they don't play the full 80 like they did against Penrith, though they didn't look like they were going to lose that game, I think the Cowboys go 2-0 here. I think they do it again. 1-6, I agree. I think there'll be a field goal in it. Whether Townsend stands up again or it's a late minute try where the Broncos kicked an early field goal, I think the Cowboys win.
Fair enough.
Now, moving on, we've got the first game at the Mark II Allianz Stadium. The Sydney Roosters have licked their wounds and returned home from Brisbane, whilst the Warriors stunned everyone over in Wellington. And of course, the Warriors, they rock up to this game also unchanged from Andrew Webster's first up victory, a 20-12 win over the Newcastle Knights.
Yeah, at the cake tin, as they call it over there. But for the Roosters, a big name is back in Joey Manu here. He's back with Drew Hutchinson, going back to interchange and Corey Allen dropping to the 18th man. Matt Lodge is out with a facial injury. His position's been taken over by Fletcher Baker. Victor Radley has been named, but I personally think will be ruled out because of his concussion that he suffered in the match against the Dolphins. And Jared Waerea-Hargreaves is still sidelined.
Before we touch on the Warriors' first victory, let's talk about the Roosters right here.
The Roosters, what was that? Loss?
Yes, that actually happened. That actually happened in front of 37,000 people at Suncorp Stadium. The Dolphins, the newest kids on the block, downing the oldest club in the league in an upset victory, 28 points to 18.
Yes. The upset of the round, and probably going to be the upset of the season so far. I was going to say the upset of the season, like, overall. But that it's way too early to jump the gun to say that.
The Dolphins set a standard unbelievable that the Roosters, they got rattled. I mean, no, not figuratively rattled. They got literally bone rattled.
One name for that bone rattlers, Felice Kafusi.
My God, Felice Kafusi, one of the first real big names they signed. He was on search and destroy from the master coach himself.
He even broke Brandon Smith in half.
Wouldn't be the first time that she's got sliced down the middle, and it's happened again. But
yes, but
the Dolphins' tackling technique and the Roosters' poor ball security,
yeah,
just made for the first collection of big hits that are going to be included at the end of the season.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
Well, Kafusi and Smith been former teammates last season too.
The Dolphins hadn't even played a full season, and they're already going to be in the end of season highlights. That's how good they played in round one.
One name, Wayne Bennett.
Well, getting back onto Felice Kafusi, he was my main standout for the Dolphins. 96 run meters, 1 tackle break, 9 hit-ups, and 30 tackles. Where about probably between a quarter and a fifth of them were just him absolutely smashing Roosters players left, right, and centre.
I was going to say, do you have the number of exactly how many you got there? How many bone rattlers he did? But, yeah.
I'm pretty sure Tedesco will be feeling his ribs after that, after getting cleaned up twice.
Yeah, you don't see that happen with Tedesco very often at all. So, but the Roosters were just way off the pace.
I didn't even care. I tipped the Roosters at one point. Like 20 minutes to go. I just didn't even care after Jermaine Azarko probably scored on his first try. I'm just like, this is just absolutely brilliant. The Dolphins
absolutely
rocking up round one on big money against them. Just like, Wayne's like, oh yeah, so we're paying about $6 to win this first game?
I reckon.
Yeah, all right, let's do it then. Let's win it.
Whoever placed a bet on the Dolphins will be making a few green, sorry.
But I also have to pay homage to the second player from the Dolphins I've named a standout player.
Jeremy Marshall-King?
No.
Oh.
And not the GOAT. I've not gone with Mark Nichols either, who's probably already a fan favourite as well.
Jermaine Osako?
No. The Hammer.
Ah, yes, that was going
Hamaso Tabuai Fido, writing himself into the history books as the Dolphins' first ever try scorer.
First and last ever first try scorer.
One try assist, 192 run meters, 3 tackle breaks, and 1 line break assist.
Unbelievable. But I was agreeing with you. With the more times that the Dolphins are pulling in front of the ball, screw that tipping. This is awesome. Like, it was so good to see a new club win in their debut match.
It was, and I think...
And a lot of people did not expect it.
Well, I think for those tipping the Dolphins, they ultimately thought the Roosters' round 1 record, in contrast to Melbourne's, is a bit more dire, especially over the last 10 years.
True.
I mean, how many times have you seen the Roosters lose in round 1?
More often than Melbourne.
But I'll tell you
That's
what,
not hard to do.
in the last 10 years, the Roosters have only won twice in round 1.
Yeah, right.
2 and 8 in round 1 over the last 10... Since Trent Robinson's been at the club.
But that's a trend too with the Roosters. They tend to start off slow, but then come back into the season, they're there.
Oh, they are there. Because
That's the trend,
in
though.
the case in 2013, 18 and 19, it didn't matter because they ended up winning the grand final that year anyway.
But they
All
started
were
off,
in the top 2 minor premiers or second and made as far as the prelims.
but they weren't. The start of those seasons weren't the best, weren't they?
No. But
Even
they
last
were
year.
rattled by the Dolphins. They big noted themselves, to be fair, and they paid the price.
Definitely.
Now, the Warriors, on the other hand, they really got under Newcastle's skin.
Well, really, Newcastle somehow lost it. Well, actually, sorry. Typical Newcastle lost it in front and then just didn't show up.
Well, the Warriors just turned the momentum around at halftime. Ed Kosey's try was a big deal breaker.
Yeah.
Because from the moment Kosey scores in the first half, the Warriors were in complete control. Oh, and despite the valiant fight back from Newcastle, and I've got to say, Kalen Ponga, first game at 5'8" for the year, actually was good defensively.
Yes, but he still was taken off with 10 minutes to go with...
Very controversially because of
Controversially,
the
yes.
independent doctor.
Yes, controversially, but still. Another concussion worry for him.
Yeah, we'll see how he pulls up after that. I would have liked to see more variation with Jackson Hastings' kicking game, but speaking of how well debutants played, I can't actually go past a former Dragon, Jackson Ford. 150 run meters, 3 tackle breaks, 1 line break, and 2 offloads. He really proved a handful out on that left edge for Andrew Webster.
Yes, he did. After one game, what a freak did the Dragons let him go?
Let me just get your little red book of all the good players as they've got kicked on at other clubs because the proper team was too chicken to sign them on.
Let me try and rattle some from the top of my head at the moment.
Let's see. Brett Morris, Josh Morris,
Damien Cook at one stage.
Damien Cook, you let him go. Let's see. Who's
Tarek Sims.
Tarek Sims, Corbin Sims, Ashton Sims. Luciano Leilua, yep, you let him go too.
Jimmy Graham.
Well, James Graham was more of an established player.
But still.
But all those good juniors you brought through only to find success at other clubs. Jason Saab, Ruben Garrick.
Yes, I know.
Ruben Garrick. Look, I think the
The
Warriors...
Dragons, ladies and gentlemen, full of old and sometimes useless players.
But getting back onto the Warriors, is they stuck it to Newcastle big time, who they themselves were probably getting written off just as much as the Dolphins were.
Pretty much. Although being at home, well, home away from the normal home at Eden Park. Mount Smart. Sorry.
Wrong venue.
Or at least I was in the right country.
You're in the right city, but not in the right part.
Sorry. At Mount Smart. Due to, I believe they were getting ready for a concert being held at Mount Smart. That's why I got moved.
It's always something else that gets teams kicked out of their initial home just for 1 week.
But hey, they played at the Cake Tin and they rose to the occasion. Sorry.
shouldn't have said the cake tin.
I'm sorry, that was
Now,
bad.
back at the Mark II Allianz Stadium, the Roosters' first home game of the year there, would you expect to see a bumper crowd that's a non-South Sydney crowd?
Yes. Majority of that crowd will be towards the Roosters, obviously.
I don't know, I suppose there's probably a couple of Central Coast people coming up that were adopted Warriors fans.
Yeah, there'll be Warriors fans there, and ones that travel pretty much wherever the freaking Warriors go. But yes, there'll still majority be Roosters fans.
I think in the same vein as the Panthers, the Roosters are looking for a big response as well. I think and they were humbled by the Dolphins, and I think Trent Robinson will sit down with some of the key players and say, look, we got to pull the socks up. If we cut the errors out and we just focus and respect the opposition that is in front of us.
And don't get bone rattled.
Well, that's that too. I think we'll play much better the style we want to play going forward. Even, I mean, they get Manu back. There's still no Warrior Hargraves. Lodge is ruled out for, what is it, up to a month at least?
Something like that.
And Victor Radley's touch and go with concussion protocol.
Like I said, I think he'll be out. The way that he got up was just not right. He'll be out. I'm ruling Victor Radley out right now.
Regardless of whether Radley plays or not, I think the Roosters are out to settle the score, not just to the media or the NRL fans at large, but I think to themselves, just for the way they got shown up like that. I think the Roosters win this 7 points to 12.
Read my mind. Exact same tip as me. Roosters 7 to 12. They'll be looking to bounce back big time after getting a loss straight up. But, yeah, 7 to 12 Roosters.
Now, focusing back on their round one opposition, the Dolphins will play their first game at the spiritual home at Redcliffe up against the Canberra Raiders. Canberra having to make a couple of readjustments themselves. Jordan Rapana rubbed out up to a couple of weeks in one change where Albert Hopewasi get to start on the wing, and still no Josh Papali'i. They're saying he could be back in time for round 3.
There you go. Jordan Rapana's out for 3 weeks too, by the way. As for the Dolphins, Mason Teague, will be making his debut off the bench, replacing Ray Stone in the otherwise unchanged lineup with Anthony Milford and Cody Nikorima amongst the reserves.
Well, that is a big statement the Dolphins made in round 1, and now it's been paid for in kindness with a sold-out KO Stadium Redcliffe for this match against the Canberra Raiders.
Which is truly deserving. But in saying that, a 37,000 strong crowd on their debut match at Suncorp, that is solid effort.
It absolutely is.
Absolutely solid. I
was actually listening to a bit of the build-up for that game about this Dolphins Facebook group they got set up between a couple of blokes over a drink. You want to know how many that grew to just in the matter of a couple of days?
What, how many people added in?
How many fans in that group? 50,000.
Oh, I was going to say near a million, but okay.
No, 50,000 people joined that group over a matter of a few days leading up to round 1. And they basically said they could fill Suncorp Stadium just through them alone. That Facebook group with 50,000 people, fans coming together to talk everything's Dolphins.
Good on them. Absolutely credit to them.
And look, I think we really didn't know what to expect with Wayne Bennett coming into a new club of altogether with a rich 75-year history of Redcliffe attached behind it. But we found out what we got. We found a typical Wayne Bennett side that is rock solid in defense, that everyone knows their job, as simple as it is, but they do it well. And I think even on the attacking side, Marshall King and Tabuai Fidow really struck a good combination, working the middles over.
That will improve big time over as the season goes on. Simple footy is sometimes, like you're saying, basic, but basic is sometimes the best way to go about it. Some of these clubs and players try to do all classy work to make it more spectacular, but basic is sometimes good. And I don't think there is much. Won't be able to put much pressure on the players this season, in the first year and everything, like with the club and combinations and that. But if you just go back to basic footy, then you build on that. But you have to also think there's a lot of experienced players in that Dolphins side. Kafusi, Bromwich Brothers, Nichols, and let's just name a few. There's a lot of experienced players in this side.
And really, the younger players had a chance to shine. Hamiso Tagovailoa, of course, getting the first crack at fullback, having to leave the Cowboys to do so, and Isaiah Katoa on debut for the Dolphins at 19 years of age.
We had a blind of a World Cup.
Yeah, he did. And look, I think from what we saw from both him and Sean O'Sullivan, there really is, for the halves, room to improve, especially against the more seasoned in pairing of Jack Whiten and Jamal Fogarty.
Oh, of course. There's a room to improve across the whole side, really.
I'm really finding it hard between these two.
I'm going to say Dolphins 7-12. Sold out Redcliffe at KO Stadium. Back to the spiritual home ground. There'll be a massive Dolphins fan base supporting their local side. And I think they'll get over the top of the Canberra Raiders.
It's a big call because the Dolphins could be on a false high. I mean, they won round one. And could they do it again and then they don't? But at the same time, I think no Papali'i in the side for Canberra. I just think the packs are pretty much even at this point. It's just the halves that'll be the difference. I'm still...
Well, Felice Kafusi bone rattles more Canberra players like he did against the Roosters. Well, that should fall into the Dolphins' favour.
I'm going to have to back my gut up with this. I think if Jamal Fogarty he kicks Canberra into a good position here, I think the Raiders is, just on pure combination. And I think if Joe Tarpany matches it because the Dolphins, they need to set the standard to play like that week in, week out. I don't think they'll be able to do it if Canberra rally around and really, if they hold the ball, they'll put the Dolphins under more pressure than what the Roosters did. And I think Canberra narrowly escape here, 1-6. It's hard. I can easily see the Dolphins going back to back, but I just think there's too much for Ricky Stewart at his disposal not to walk away with a round 2 win.
Fair enough. So, our first opposite tips for this week.
Now, to wrap up Super Saturday, it's the Melbourne Storm up against the Canterbury Bulldogs.
Go on. Bulldogs being on the side.
Oh, yeah. And after a shocking display at Brookvale Oval, going down 31-6 to the Sea Eagles, unchanged lineup with rookies Jaden Tanner and Jacob Preston both retained.
Yes, and as for the home side, the Melbourne Storm, Cameron Munster is out, so that pushes Tyrone Wisher into 5/8 with Aaron Penne coming in onto the bench after recovering from a rib injury, with Xavier Coates being named to play despite picking up a bit of a shoulder injury against Parramatta.
Well, chalk and cheese between the Storm and the Dogs in round 1. Of course, Melbourne going through for their 20th win in round 1. Canterbury absolutely destroyed for really their, if I think back over 10 years, they like the Roosters have not had the best run in round 1. And I think of course, we got the win last year, which is really a bright spot. Considering the only other times we've won was 2016 from memory.
But yeah, the side that the Bulldogs put together, that performance was absolutely horrendous.
I mean,
Sorry to say, but that was horrendous.
What was Viliami Kikau doing, kicking on tackle 5? And what's the point?
License.
Why was Matt Burton giving it to Viliami Kikau on tackle 5 to begin with? I mean, he's the co-captain. He should have been taking responsibility for that. A lot of questionable tackle 5 options going on there.
And poor ones.
Yes, very, very poor results on tackle 5 right there. I think Reid Marnie earns his weight in gold for Canterbury in the really dire conditions and for that team to play. And the right edge showed some bright sparks as well between Avarillo, Faitala Mariner, Carraz, and Flanagan. But really, they were overplaying their hand on the left-hand side for little to no gain.
Yes. But in saying that, Manly, Tommy Turbo, first game back, and how many tries did he score?
Only one.
How many did DCE score? 2?
Well,
3?
Hat-trick.
Hat-trick.
His first ever career hat-trick in what is probably his second to last season at Manly and is his career. He was... I couldn't look past him for the standout player. Tom Drabojevic, he might have scored on his first game back, but
DCE
he's not 100%.
Of course he isn't. It will take time to settle in that, but he
didn't... It looked like he would break out a couple of times, but he just held himself back,
he just doesn't want to risk it.
Not confident yet.
But this game will build his confidence with his hamstring and that.
But Daly Cherry Evans, 3 tries, 1 try assist, 123 run meters, 3 tackle breaks, 1 offload, and 2 goal line dropouts. Yet another masterclass from probably one of Manly's most recognised halfbacks now.
Yep.
I think he's built himself up there with the likes of Matt Orford and Jeff Uvi for really the Manly Hall of Fame. Amen. Probably best side ever assembled.
Yeah, possibly. That's a big call. But yeah, he had an absolute blinder of a game for round 1 and for Manly after a poor end to the end of 2022. This game was sold out too, so that would have helped a lot with all the Manly fans to back in their club. Is it going to be a false start though? We'll have to wait and touch on Manly's game in a minute.
Manly aren't playing.
Oh, that's right. Sorry.
They got the bye. They won't be back until round 3 against Parramatta.
Well, there you go. I need to get used to this bye system every week. But yeah, is it a false start though? Is it a false hope? We'll have to wait round 3.
Well, there'll be any injury lingering they have will be rectified by that point. It's like
You'd hope so.
But still, to have the bye this week, that's like a big... To get this win, it's like a big double points win.
Yeah.
And that puts them inside the top 4 at the end of round 2.
Yeah.
Depending on for and against.
But the Dogs will want to bounce back big time. But I did say in the previews with the Bulldogs, the games that I would have tipped the opposition team, like Manly and Melbourne, I would have gone with the Dogs. After what I saw from the Dogs in round 1, I might start to flip that. But it's only round 1 in the season. It's very early on. Things can improve.
But things can get away from a side very quickly.
Yes.
It takes effort to win games. It doesn't take much to lose them.
That is true.
Look, even if we do massively improve our tackle 5 options, which is a possibility, I think Matt Burton will not be happy with the way that performance, his first one as a co-captain, went out. I think we're still going to get bullied around the middle. I thought Melbourne stood firm against the Eels, even with the adversities they were having themselves. And coming back to Amy Park, it's going to be a hostile environment, and the Dogs' recent record has been a reflection of these two sides. I think the Melbourne Storm win this 13-20.
Yeah, I have to agree. Amy Park, hard ground to beat Melbourne at. But
even though it's been shaky, sorry for cutting you off, but even though it has been shaky in recent weeks, weeks of the 2022 season, especially with Canberra rolling in down there and getting the win, and they're looking to build on another solid year, I think. I could be wrong. They could still make the top 4, and I could probably say that was a foolish thing for me to say that finished 9th or not. But still, I got to judge Melbourne on what I see in front of me, and I think the Storm at home, and even without Cameron Munster, this is what the next month looks for them.
I was going to say, without Cameron Munster, it might lead to
Titans away, Tigers at home, South away, and then the Roosters at home. So
2 winnable games and 2 that are 50-50.
Yeah, exactly.
Tigers, Tigers will be easy victories, whereas the Roosters and Souths will be very, very tough with that monster.
But we'll see how they do at the end of that. As for you,
Yeah, Melbourne's 13-20. They will be too strong for the Dogs, especially being back at Amy Park for the first game of the season. Melbourne does bring the side with that Cameron Monster, does bring them back slightly down, closer to the Bulldogs, but they'll still do enough.
it's a no contest.
Yeah.
As much as I don't want to say it, it's really a no contest.
Yeah.
Now to the first Sunday afternoon fixture. It's the West Tigers up against the Newcastle Knights at the 8th Wonder of the World, Leichhardt Oval.
For the away side, Dan Gagai is back, which also is Tyson Frizzell, pending concussion protocols. Adam Elliott suffered a groin injury in round 1, and his place on the bench is taken by Jack Johns. Greg Marzu is listed among the reserves as he nearing a return from a hip injury there.
As for Tim Sheens, his second game in charge at back-to-back games at Leichhardt Oval, the Tigers relatively unchanged, though a few positional swaps. Joe Offengawi now comes in to start at lock forward. Alex Twal goes back to the bench. Appy Coruscant now named to start at dummy half. Whether he does stay there come kick off instead of going back to the bench. A couple of other things, just his concussion and why Sean Bloor being named, but he has to pass us concussion protocols as well as Brent Naden and Tommy Talau. Very lucky to still be playing in this game, despite the shocking result going down to the Gold Coast Titans, 22 points to 10.
Despite the Tigers getting the first points via a penalty goal, they started coming back at the Gold Coast Titans when it was 18-10, but then that's it for the Tigers. Adam Dewey needs to really work on his goal-kicking game again, only getting 1 for 3, which is just poor.
I mean, look, he wasn't the worst player out there, Adam Dewey.
Yes,
he was the one who actually cares about that club.
Yeah,
Luke Brooks, on the other hand, I've made my position clear about Luke Brooks for years now.
Yeah, he had some periods. He was
The fact that you're actually struggling to say that about Luke Brooks says it all, really.
Well, I mean, how are you supposed to word it? It was poor, but it was better somewhat than what he had been. A very small amount. Like,
I really didn't see the difference.
well, I mean, there were some parts there where he.
I mean, if he gets the if he actually gets the Tigers into the finals, then I could see the difference. But
like I said, it was like, how are you supposed to word it? Like a bloody very small snip of a corner off a newspaper, kind of like a very, very tiny bit. I don't know. I'm just lost for words.
A small scrap, that small little tear that a OCD perfectionist would probably blow up over.
Yeah, pretty much.
Look, the Titans absolutely dominated. I think losing Beau Fermor didn't help their case one bit. However, moving David Fafita back over to the left edge did him a world of good outside of Kieran Four. And I gotta say, it showed for the Titans. David Fafita only just re-signing with the club on a new 3-year contract extension.
As of yesterday, I believe.
206 run meters, 1 try assist, 4 tackle breaks, 1 line break, and an offload.
Yeah.
I was listening just to the little start of Matty John on Sunday Night Show, and he was just like, he actually has direction now that he had Kieran Foran on the outside of him.
Well,
that
for
they're
how
actually
much Kieran Foran played the match for.
Yeah, that they're actually using Fafita smartly now. That he actually knows what he's doing rather than just pick the ball up and just run.
Yeah, exactly. Which is what we might see more of, but depending on how long Kieran Foran's out for. But the really poor thing with me, well, one, Gold Coast shouldn't have let Kieran Foran out as long as they did. 2, same thing over the Tigers with Tommy Talau. They should have not. According to this, it was only leg cramps, but I think they should have brought Tommy Talau off when he first started to struggle, especially when he's coming back from an ACL injury. The amount it took him a long, long time from the finally realise, we need to get him off the field.
Yeah, it was that. But the Tigers' defence, I mean, you look at, never mind the fact that they couldn't contain David Fafita for long periods of time. What about the other 2 tries they conceded in the first half alone?
Oh, I was just thinking AJ Brimson try, how easy was that from the scrum?
And then the Sam McIntyre try. I was watching that, I'm like, you're absolutely joking, aren't you?
Yeah.
That's under 6. That is literally an under 6's try right there.
Yeah.
How do you not pounce on that ball if there's 3 of you there alone?
But what did go in the Tigers' favour, though, a short goal and drop it, I went over the sideline.
Oh, dear God.
But the Tigers, in a way, got back-to-back repeat sets as well. Or was it another game I'm thinking of? But I'm putting pressure down on the Titans' try line, but still they couldn't score anything. That just shows how well the Titans' defence is and how poor the Tigers' attacking is.
And all the drop balls from the Tigers as well didn't help their case either. But that was just... The Tigers fans, I think, was sold a dud.
Yep.
They were promised a second coming of Tim Sheens, and he hasn't delivered yet. And I think with Hastings coming back to Leichhardt, he will have a score to settle. He'll say to the press, and he'll say, hey, online, there is no score to settle with Michael Maguire or the West Tigers. We'll just go out there and worry about us. Oh, believe me, there is a score to settle here. And I think I'm backing Newcastle to get retribution for narrowly losing round 1. I think they'll be much improved here. I think if he can variate his kicking game, Hastings, and Ponga takes the line on, I think Newcastle 1-6. They'll come away with the 2 points here, building into the first home game of the year.
Look, I'm going to say actually Newcastle wins on 7-12. The performance that the Tigers did was just horrendous at the 8th one of the world, and also Knights started off against the Warriors reasonable, but then just faded out. They'll build on what they did well in the start of that match against the Warriors, and they'll push that on to round 2 against the Tigers.
And speaking of the Titans, they will be in action in the second Sunday night game, travelling away once more to face the St. George Illawarra Dragons at Netstrata Jubilee Stadium, Cogra. They have named an unchanged lineup so far, but are still sweating on Kieran Foran at this point. And Toby Sexton will be the man to come in most likely, should Foran be ruled out.
For the first game of the season for the Dragons, we have got... Do you want me to go through the full team list?
Full team, it's the first time.
Yeah. Okay. So at fullback, we've got Tyrell Sloan, with the winners being Matt Feeney and Michaeli Ravalawa. Centres being Moses Sully and Zach Lomax, with the halves Jaden Sullivan and Ben Hunt. At lock, we've got Jack Burden, second row, Ben Murdoch, Marcel and Jaden Stewart, with up front being Francis Molo, Moses Mbai, and Blake Glory. The bench, Jacob Little, Zane Musgrove, Toby Couchman looking to make his debut, and Michael Molo. 18th man, Josh Kerr, coached Anthony Griffin.
Well, it's very interesting to see how St. George Illawarra do line up, given the recent news only today that Alatawa Amone is now no longer subject to the NRL's no-fault stand-down policy.
Well, he's in jersey 21. Could he be a late inclusion?
Personally, now thinking about it, Jaden Sullivan thought the moment he heard Amone was stood down for this, he thought, finally. I mean, you've probably been thinking oh no, that's completely terrible. The teammate stands accused of assault, facing 11 years in jail if he's convicted.
But that's off-field. On-field, you think, sweet, I actually get my first real crack.
At 5'8".
Yes.
Because he's been used, he started at halfback when Ben Hunt's not there, and he's also been used off the interchange when everyone's fit and available.
Yeah.
This is his real first, like you said, this is a first real crack for him at 5'8".
But how it does perform, knowing that Amone is now not under the NRL's no stand down fault policy, whatever it is.
Yes.
No fault stand down.
Just for the clarification on that, the NRL's no fault stand down policy only relates to crimes that carry a maximum 11 years or more sentence.
So like Jack DeBellin's case.
But Amone's lawyers were able to argue, I think, on a legal technicality somewhere, and the maximum sentence is now brought down to 5 years instead of 11. So they were able to bring really the time down, but he's still got to face trial.
Oh yeah, it certainly does. But at least he'd be free to play, which
Yeah.
is good for not only him and his career, but for the Dragons as well.
Interestingly, Moses Suli, Zach Lomax, they swapped edges during the preseason challenge. Do you expect Anthony Griffin to continue with that, or do you think he'll revert to Lomax right centre, Suli on the left?
Oh, I'd say he'll revert back. Both times, well, even back in the last year as well, but both preseason games it just did not work. Seriously, did not work whatsoever. So we revert back to what they know best, which is Zach on the right.
Yep.
And Suli on the left.
So you reckon that's what's going to happen here, as well as Sullivan? How many weeks would you give him to start at 5'8" before maybe thinking about putting Amone on the bench?
2 to 3 weeks. See how he goes. But what I'm a bit annoyed about is why the hell is Mbai starting dummy half when we've got Jacob Little? Jacob Little, I thought, come to the Dragons to start as our dummy half, but no.
Well, that's Anthony Griffin's logic right there. He's the one who's making the calls. He probably thinks it'd be better to try and ease Little, or given his ACL history as well, to try and...
But didn't he not start against St. Helens and against Souths?
Well, it seems obvious from his point of view that he saw something in Moses Mbai and that he's preferred to start him over Little.
But if Amada comes back in, I mean, I don't dislike Moses Mbai, but he's past it. But if Sullivan and Amona were there, I'll put, Amona in the halves alongside Hunt, put Little in that starting dummy half, and then bring Sullivan off in the utility 14 and have Mbai drop out altogether.
Or go through door number 3, Amone and Sullivan in the halves, Ben Hunt shifts to dummy half.
True, but where did you put Little? Off the bench?
Still off the bench.
Yeah, okay, I didn't think about it that way, but yeah. That's what I would do, but anyway.
There'll be a couple of key matchups here, I reckon. David Fafita against Jaden Sewer for one, and that'll be one battle to look out for. But I also think Jojo Fafita marking up against Matt Fierney. If the Titans can get some quality ball out of these two Fafita brothers, there's going to be hell to pay.
Yes, there's definitely going to be hell to pay. We just need to really try and muscle up in defence, really, which is what we, especially that side where it was weaker, where they started trialling Lomax on the other side, but didn't work out. That's the side that I think Gold Coast will be targeting, and that's the side that we really need to watch in defence, as well as in the middle with like Fafita, Fastly, and Whaley, and all the likes of them.
But that's the big thing for David Fafita's point of view. He's got this new 3-year contract extension. A lot less money than what he initially signed on for. He had the Broncos and the Raiders probably offering him big, or not that much, but offering him a challenge. He's got to now repay that faith shown in him by Justin Holbrook and Mal Meninga to say, all right, I've earned this 3-year contract extension. We reckon I want to actually put in. And if he can continue a whole year on the left edge, we'll see how far the Titans actually go. I think, and just on the terms of match fitness, we saw in the Super League with, Huddersfield.
Well, and St. Helens as well.
Well, Saints actually got the first win when they played, but Huddersfield off the pace in round 2 when they played against Warrington. Very lucky to get away from Wakefield just the week gone. And we'll talk more about it heading into the Super League Week 4 debrief coming up. But a final tip, I think the Titans have got them here, 7-12.
Look, I want to say the Gold Coast too, but it's the first game from the boys in the Red V, so I'm just going to back my boys week 1 to see how they go. Dragons 1-6. The history between the Dragons Titans, it seriously can go either way. We've seen that in the past. But yeah, I think the boys in Red V will get up 1-6.
So one that backs the Titans to go 2-0, the other that says St George Illawarra to get their first ever win from round 2. Well, that's all we've got for this NRL debrief this week, but don't go anywhere, because after the break we're going to bring everything to do with the Betfred Super League Week 4 debrief. Can St Helens bounce back after a controversial finish in the grand final rematch? Are Lee bound for higher honours after a remarkable 30 points to 25 win? And what is going on at the Jungle? We'll be right back after this short